The news media lies to their readers. It might not surprise you that the American corporate news media routinely lies to you as viewers and as readers, either on their online sites or on their news channels. Politico inadvertently admitted this in a story published early the morning after the 2024 presidential election that Kamala Harris lost. Kamala Harris is the type of person who leaves her followers standing all night at Howard University, her alma mater, and then they told them to come in the morning, this morning, the morning after the election, and they said, come show up to wait for Kamala's big speech. Well, Kamala didn't show up for that either, because that's the sort of person she is. These voters, these supporters, and America dodged a disaster by Kamala Harris not winning the 2024 presidential election. In coming up with a post-mortem on why Kamala Harris lost the election, Politico accidentally admitted the truth. They lied to their readers about this election continuously. In their zeal to do a post-mortem report, reporters Christopher Catalogo and Holly Audubon, working for Politico, accidentally admit that they were lying to you this entire campaign. Their job is not to inform their readers at Politico. Their job is to sculpt public opinion by withholding crucial information from you so that you cannot make the best decisions when voting. What else do they lie to you about? Let's read into the article some more. Why Kamala Harris lost the election. Kamala Harris refused to make a clean break from the Biden administration. Alright, so let's take a look here. I want you to look at these statements through the story, and I'm going to highlight for you their sources. Think about who the Politico reporters talked to, where they got their information, and then ask yourself, why didn't they tell you any of this before election night 2024? Some close allies and even a few aides privately questioned why she continued to hold Joe Biden so closely to her. We ran the best campaign we could considering Joe Biden was president, grumbled one Harris aide granted anonymity to speak freely. Another Harris aide said it was clear Biden should have made a graceful exit much sooner. Seems to be a pattern here. Do you notice this? Forget about the story. Look at what Politico is admitting the morning after the election. Some of the party's next-generation leaders were signaling the need for a deep autopsy of the party's failures to stop the red wave. Folks, remember when they filed this story? Early the morning after the election. There is absolutely no way Politico lined up all of these anonymous interviews the morning after the election. This was information they held on to for weeks, even months, throughout this year, and they did not feel free or fit to tell you any of this as readers of Politico. Inside the campaign, some elected officials and strategists had been warning that not only was their operation lagging, but it was being poorly run. 3 weeks before Election Day in Pennsylvania, Jewish Democrats and their allies met behind closed doors with Harris officials in Pittsburgh, according to 4 people who attended or were briefed on the discussion. Think about that. This means that Politico had this information 3 weeks ago, and they withheld this information from their readers in order to protect their candidate of choice, their party of choice, and the ideology of their political cause. Whatever you might call this, it is not journalism. It is the opposite of journalism to withhold the truth from your readers. They said the Pennsylvania team lacked relationships with key elected officials, that this mattered because it meant validators weren't effectively being used to help persuade voters to support a candidate they barely knew. Wow, this might have been informative. The infighting and second guessing was already beginning. One Democrat granted anonymity to describe a private conversation, called the meeting a venting. There's no amount of social media ads or TV ads or podcast interviews or anything that you can do that's going to influence people because their ballots are cast and they can't go back and change it, a second Democrat said. Latino and Black Democrats held similar private meetings with Harris's team in the weeks leading up to Election Day, where they made many of the same complaints. So Politico made a major mistake here in publishing this, because they're admitting that they lied to their audience, they lied to their readers, and withheld crucial information from you when making a vital decision about voting in an American presidential election. What else does Politico hide from you routinely where they have decided that you cannot be trusted with the facts? Look at this quote here. Something viewed by Democrats who know her best as an advantage. Harris had just more than 100 days to mount her campaign, freeing her from an ideologically packed contested primary. So this is a nice way of saying Kamala Harris does better when people don't get to know her. I mean, if that isn't insulting, I don't know what is. Harris had quietly laid the groundwork for her campaign weeks earlier when she gathered several of her top advisors and a few close allies to begin preparing for what they imagined would be the vice presidential debate. Folks, I don't think this lady did any preparation at all. It certainly didn't come across that way during her sole debate with Donald Trump. She had no prep at all and was told that the moderators would debate for her. After the initial elation among Democrats settled, Harris began to face questions from the media over her not sitting for interviews with major news outlets. Well, folks, if Politico had been more honest in their reporting 60 days ago, maybe they could have averted some of the disaster that actually took place. Did these arrogant people ever think of that? No. And once again, here's the very end of the article. Harris's aides during the campaign stressed that this was a line she was unwilling to cross. So let's go conclude here and look once again at the very top of the article. This was published 6:21 a.m. Eastern Standard Time the morning after the election that Kamala Harris just lost. There is absolutely no way that a single one of these attributions to anonymous sources, to aides, to senior Democrat officials, none of these quotes were lined up last night or early this morning. Politico held on to all this information and lied to their readers every day leading up to the election because they were protecting the cause. They do not view educating you as part of their duties. And this is the biggest problem with the American corporate news media of all. Who do these people work for? They do not work for the American people or the voters of this election. Thank you.